Hi, Erín Moure here,
And Jessi MacEachern.
and we're going to talk today about Jessi MacEachern's newest book, Cut Side Down, just out from Invisible Publishing um, this month.
That's right.
And so it's very exciting. It's Jessi's second full length collection, and I think of it as an exorbitant book, a book of winks and hoodwinks and glissades across gendered identities, pulling all the pronouns with it. It's defiant, it's cheerful, I find. It's sexually impudent. It's serious too. But it's a book that gives joy and courage in our times, I think, for sure, when people feel so much that identities are under threat again. Its poetry in this book is a jubilant barking into the future. And that's a quote from the book. Jessi, thanks for coming and joining me. And I just want to say these poems, wow, they're like full of writers and persons wiggling and emerging as verbs in the life of a woman, our poet, who defies and negates any kind of typecasting. It's a delightful and it's energetic to read, and it made me laugh. You adopt tones and switch them like an Elizabethan drunk on prose. All these identities and shifts, the details of being in a life, reading books, what it does to the life of a woman. Yet the poems exceed the books and authors that are mentioned in them. They're not just name dropping, they move attention. Attention is always in motion. So my first question is for you is, did writing the book teach you anything about identity, or is identity an inscription practice?
Yes, of course it is. At the end of the poem, I Belong to the Women, I say, "This is my fictional autobiography of reading." And so, throughout the process of writing this book, I discovered that these women writers were also writing me.
Mm-hmm.
That happens, in paying attention to Virginia Woolf's Orlando, which I read as a love letter to Sackville West, but also a language lab in
Mm-hmm.
which the writing subject transforms. As well as Gladman's Event Factory, in which we get this shifty landscape that is itself a page or textuality. And thus, we see through attention to the human an ability to make oneself through storytelling. That's something I take from Sylvia Wynter, who thinks that human
Mm-hmm.
evolution is storytellingly telling ourselves.
Oh, storytellingly telling ourselves. You heard it here. And from Sylvia Wynter is a great writer. I'm just going to go back to the 18th century because in the 18th century, I could try prose, is a line from the first poem in your book. The 18th century is silent, which makes me think of, being who I am, Michel Foucault. The author for Foucault, as you already know, as opposed to the writer, is a way of setting a boundary of ownership of property that allows publishers actually to lay claim to texts. And it arose as a notion in the 18th century, late 18th century, says Foucault, at a time when the development of the modern novel was speeding up, taking on speed, and also book publishing was becoming. There were cheaper ways to do it, and it was starting to become more prevalent printing. You reject prose here, the century being the 21st, and with all your merry ingestion of these authorial presences in your poems, which you've mentioned, you bring this delineation and property holding right back to proliferation and transgression. You're really dexterous in taking these risks with forms that might just run away from you. So, my question of you is, why are you so unruly?
I'm very happy to be seen as unruly in your eyes, Erin. So the Foucauldian rupture does come up throughout this text, in part as Nicole Brossard's idea of the breach of reality required for utopian thinking.
Oh,
And
nice.
so, in part, Foucault's to blame, Brossard is to blame, but so too is Lynn Hygenian and her open text. When I first read The Rejection of Closure,
Mm,
it was with the idea that I would solemnly commit myself to a disruptive text, an innovative text, a text that was open to appropriation.
Wow. So you solemnly committed yourself to being
I
unruly.
solemnly swear.
That's that's so wonderful. That's so wonderful. Let's just insert a little bit of you reading.
Such a stench as this makes me blush. You dip your fat thumb into the red and discover my secret delicacy. See how fast I change fidelities. Pursuing now death, now life, now sex, garments, desecration. Our palms make black imprints in the meat of my childhood's thighs. The pungent earth, a flagging quality of crisis. To return to a garden, I get on all fours and howl. We are barking into the future.
Wow. Thanks for that reading. I always think of your poems. I'm one of your happy readers of your first book, and I always look for your text. So I always think of your poems as eruptive text, and you as engaged in working with eruptive textualities. In a way, an open book left cut side down will bend it all out of shape. The storehouse of archive then shifts, leaving an opening. As Derrida in Mal d'Archives says, the archive is an irreducible experience of the future. Archive's not just a memory and a storehouse, rather its site, both what's inside it and what's outside it, moves. If archive reaches us, it will only be in the time to come. And that time to come is always already arriving. Okay, this is a long prelude, but how does Cut Side Down speak to the time to come?
So these are poems that exceed life writing to become a writing of the multitude. If, as I've said previously, Virginia Woolf, Renee Gladman, and Lorene Nidecker write myself into being, I hope these poems will help readers rewrite themselves into new modes of being. And so I want to see readers, with their skirts overhead, barking into the future, becoming architects of wildly proliferating archives. This means refusing governability and becoming or unbecoming disruptive citizens.
I like that idea of the disruptive citizen a lot, not in the way that some politicians out there are disruptive.
No.
But disrupting to invent and reinvent and to be. I think in that respect, you wrote my autobiography too. My last question of you, in a way, there's a link between reading and falling in love, since reading is falling in love with someone's words and ingesting them to vibrate against one's own. And reading too is autobiography. Like, it's a stretch, but can I say that? As we all read differently through our own bodies, our own pronouns, our own experiences. And on top of that, reading, as well as being absorption or jouissance, is also, well, what I might say here, it's also a kinetics of observation and doubt. So present in Cut Side Down. Put it in the middle here. Can you close, Jessi, please, by saying a few words about doubt and about observation?
Yeah, doubt, I think, is my preferred methodology in the way that it refuses a presumed mastery over any text, that which you're writing or reading. And with doubt comes the necessity of paying close attention to your surroundings and to the objects of those surroundings. And so throughout this book, there's a lot of close attention to skirts, brocades, curtains, and these new cityscapes that are built up as ephemeral commons by the women writers throughout. They're like the public board of that new city, but they're also the ornamental statues. And you get lost in admiring the details. You get lost in admiring the beauty, but that losing oneself requires further close attention.
Bringing doubt and observation right together, in a sense.
Yes.
Ah, smart. Well, we're out of time here, and so we have to go. Just Cut Side Down by Jessi MacEachern, the wonderful Invisible Publishing, a wonderful press. Please look for it and dig into the book. Thank you. I'm Erín Moure.
Thank you. I'm Jessi MacEachern.